right, welcome everybody. Call this meeting to order. Today is May 3rd. We'll have an agenda review session for our meeting. It's going to be on Monday, May 8th. If I could get a roll call, please, City Clerk.
Commissioner Yates,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Birdsong.
Here.
Mayor Dancer.
Here. We have a quorum. Okay, so the presentations will be Mental Health Awareness Month. That'll be proclamation from Morgan Wilson. We'll do that Monday night. Drinking water proclamation, that'll be Monday night. And then tonight, we've got a digital air traffic control tower update, Alex Vaca. So City Manager, you want to tee this up or just introduce Alex?
I just introduce Alex. I'm the expert on digital remote towers or aviation, but since he's the airport director.
You
Go ahead.
won't kill Hamlet in the first act on this topic, will
Yeah,
you?
let's just go ahead and go with it.
Good evening, Mayor Danzler, Mayor.
He's had a big day already today with this whole aviation school thing opening up, so let him ride the wave for a little bit longer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about this digital remote tower project, a very exciting item we've been working on for quite some time. I'm joined tonight by an esteemed colleague here, John Helms, the airport director of Bartow Executive Airport. You know, it's been quite a collaboration between the two governments here to present this item tonight, but I'm excited to show you really how we've put this all together into, one cohesive item for approval and hopes that we can get this project started. So tonight we're going to talk about perfect. So tonight we're going to take you through the project summary, a high level reminder of what the goal of this project is. Well, I outline the timeline, design, bid, construction, and when we can actually see an air traffic control tower online. We'll talk about the operating hours and the staffing requirements for this control tower, what it will take to maintain it, and review the two agenda items associated with this project. Okay, so as a reminder, this is a design and construction of a digital remote air traffic control tower. It's essentially what looks like a cell phone tower with a camera array all the way around the top of it and then 360-degree view with an additional camera that can be panned left, right, up, down, and zoomed in. That sticks out of the top of it. And it acts just like a traditional air traffic control tower. The only difference is it's operated remotely. So offsite by still certified air traffic controllers. And in the case of the Winter Haven Digital Remote Tower, our operations center, the actual controllers running it will be located at the control center at Bartow. So Bartow's partnership is to build their own digital remote tower. So there's two towers going in, one at Bartow, one at Winter Haven, and one control center going in at Bartow that will operate both. A breakdown of the project, it's, as you can see, 1.2 million. Broken down by engineering, the Frequentis technology manufacturer, that is the sophisticated technology, the camera system, the operating components that make it work. And then you can see the physical construction of the tower is actually not that expensive. It's the equipment that's mounted to it. So the timeline, if approved on Monday night, we can begin the site survey for where the tower will go immediately. That will lead into the design plans and specifications for the tower. We'll go through the bidding process and begin construction, as you can see, roughly March of next year, with the bottom line date of approximately September 2024 of the tower being operational, so about 1.5 years. The operating hours for the tower, we would like to match what Bartow Executive Airport has. So that's 10 hours per day. It's commonly known as like a daytime tower. That would change our airspace. We're currently uncontrolled, so that would make us a Class D controlled airport, requiring the users of the airport to communicate with the tower. We would like to operate the tower 7 days per week. So as we get into the staffing requirements, it does require the same amount of controllers as a traditional tower. The way that we have this lined up so far is a partnership with Bartow Airport. So Bartow currently has a tower. They have air traffic controllers on staff. And what we have proposed here is to have Bartow own the staffing of the Winter Haven Tower and the Bartow Tower and have an agreement between our cities that, basically we would essentially contract those staffing services from Bartow. We would pay those salaries via contract. But John would have operational control, hiring, and the process would be streamlined where he can continue to evaluate and hire and maintain the schedule for both towers. There's a really good reason why to do that. So the operations center being at Bartow, if you envision this control room and you'll have computer stations across it, you're going to have 2 air traffic controllers running the Winter Haven Tower. You're going to have 2 air traffic controllers across the room running the Bartow Tower. And then you're going to have an air traffic manager overseeing operations happening at both. And by having this all under one umbrella, the idea that John came up with here, which sounds great to me, is we can split the expense of that control manager and have that person share responsibilities between both cities. That's what we have outlined now. I think the salaries, are subject, to a little bit of flexibility depending on the responsibilities as we continue to fine tune how this will work. But roughly the added expense, which would not begin until the control tower is operational. So not this current fiscal year budget, but this time next year for the proposed budget, there would be staffing expense for the control tower of roughly $200,000. But I will add the school district has expressed sincere interest in opening an air traffic control school. They have a framework approved by the Department of Education to open that air traffic control school, and there's a lot of work happening to do that. So I think the long-term goal is to have an air traffic control school co-located with John's operations center at his airport. And that way, eventually, as the students and instructors are working and using our towers as a training site, our staffing costs can be offset by the fact that the school is collecting tuition and operating it. Now, I say that, the tower is still going to be operated at the highest level with licensed controllers. Students are not going to be, running the tower in an unsafe manner, but there's an opportunity there to capitalize on the equipment and the personnel that we have and offset some of our costs at the same time. So the maintenance for the tower. The good news here, Frequentis has offered a 3-year equipment warranty. So during the first 3 years, the corrective maintenance will be free of charge, as you can see. We've spoken with them a lot about what that looks like. They have their own staff that can deploy within a day to come out to the airport and work on the tower if there's an outage. There are going to be agreements between Bartow and Winter Haven on what to do if the tower does go out of service. The good news here is John has a traditional tower. We have our Sun and Fun mobile tower. So if we did have some sort of outage, they can immediately transition to a traditional tower setting and continue to operate while the tower is under maintenance. After the warranty period, Frequentis has provided this pricing sheet. So you can see, for the most part, the equipment that's mounted to the tower is not terribly expensive, with the exception of that advanced PTZ camera. That's the one that's on the very top that can pan and zoom and has infrared. That piece of equipment is $116,000. And working with Team Michael on this project, we came, with the idea that we could set aside a depreciation fund over year to save up for an equipment replacement in that amount. It says approximately 5 years is the manufacturer's mean time between failure, but that equipment could absolutely outlive 5 years. So there would need to be funds set aside each year to save up for something like that, but that does not mean all the equipment needs to be mandatory replaced. And at the bottom of that screen, you can see the associated costs for a 1-day, a 2-day, or a 3-day site visit for the maintenance, travel, and lodging. So as I mentioned, there are 2 agenda items associated with this. The first one is a resolution accepting an FDOT grant to pay for this tower. So here's the great news. Out of the $1,230,000 this project is, the state of Florida is paying 100% of it. So that is good. We've received the first $500,000 in the grant that's associated with this resolution. And I just spoke again to our FDOT representative today, and she assured me the remaining $730,000 is anticipated for their next fiscal year starting on July 1. So there'll be a follow-up supplemental grant agreement that will be brought to the City Commission for approval. So that's great news. We're very fortunate to have the funding. The other good news item on the funding is John Helms received the same level of grant. His full project is covered 100% by FDOT. His governing body has also approved already the grant agreement, and they're underway for design. The second item on the agenda is a task order for Hanson Professional Services to conduct the design, bidding, and construction administration for this project. Another great news item here is Hanson is one of our continuing engineers, but they're also a continuing engineer at Bartow. So Hanson has an approved task order from Bartow to begin design. So you have the same firm designing, bidding, and seeing the construction at both airports. The other thing that we talked a lot about and worked with our purchasing department has to do with acquisition of the technology and construction of the tower. So this technology is proprietary. We feel confident that we can sole source the technology because the key here is we have to have the same Frequentis equipment at our airport as it is at Bartow. Otherwise, the communication doesn't work. So we're covered there on the purchasing side. And for the tower construction, the physical tower construction, John Helms and I have worked out where he will advertise an invitation to bid for a tower that has the same or very similar specifications to our tower. So we should, if everything works out correctly, and we work between our, our attorneys, which have the same law. Yeah, the same law firm. It's the same law firm of both governments. So that should work out quite well. That we would be able to piggyback their contract and just, again, kind of streamline the process from start to finish.
Who's footing the bill for all the legal costs is what I want to know.
In conclusion, this is our initial proposed location for the virtual tower. One thing I will say is our utility project that we completed in that eastern development area, that this part on the right side of the image, that already has water, sewer, and fiber in the ground. John Helms and I met with HIP and the IT director over at Bartow to start talking about the internet requirements, fiber to run from our tower over to Bartow. And we have a roadmap lined out where HIP feels very confident with his Summit broadband deal that he can get a dedicated fiber line from our tower all the way down the highway to the airport at Bartow. And John's working on his end to establish connection from the control center out to the highway so that they can link up and provide a stable connection. John and I stand here ready and excited to answer any questions that you may have in hopes that we can get this project started.
Questions, Commissioner? Exciting times.
Will all planes require a radio?
That's a great question. So the answer to that question is yes, but there is a slight caveat there. One of the things when we started this project, we were taking a sincere consideration to Jack Brown Seaplane Base, as they have been a longstanding tenant. They're operating for a very long time, a great reputation, and some of their aircraft do not have radios. And so one of the things that we talked about early on was the fact that this control tower that we're bringing on, we are paying for. It's not an FAA federally, mandated tower. It's our tower. We hire the staff. So there's more flexibility there where we could craft memorandums of understanding if we want to authorize entry and exit routes for them specific. If there's anything that we want to do to customize this operation, we can. But at the highest level, the answer to your question is yes. All aircraft arriving and departing Winter Haven would be required to have a radio.
If they,
Yes, and if you'd like to speak to that, sorry.
if they came in after the operating hours of the tower. So nobody's picking up the phone at that point, right?
It's Gulf airspace at that point. It becomes uncontrolled, just like it is
Today.
Yeah, when the tower shuts down, you go to a no comm status or a verbal report traffic patterns, just like it is all the time. Same thing at Bartow. We have tenants that have aircraft, no radios on board, and they fly when the tower closes. You see some of your anti-aircraft taxi out right as they secure tower services for the day.
How do planes that aren't based at Winter Haven Airport know of this change?
Okay, so that's, you want me? Okay, so that's it's a slightly complex question, but in the aviation world, but we have a status of issuing system with amongst pilots in aviation required by law called the NOTAM system. Initially, once this goes through, Hanson with Alex will develop airspace. They will submit application to FAA for a Class Delta airspace. At the point that that's approved, That will ultimately push out a chart supplement to all aviation charts. So if you open up an aviation chart today and you look at Winter Haven, you'll see a little magenta circle identifying the airport. And if you look at Bartow, you'll see a little circle identifying the airport, but the difference is around Bartow, you'll see a blue dashed circle around the airport within 4 miles. And that tells all the pilots, got a little square box, says what the altitude at the top of it is. And it says on that chart, once you penetrate this, you're within that airspace and you have to get comms. You have to be on two-way radio communication prior to entering, or establish two-way radio communication prior to entering. So in the interim, those come out every 6 months or so, but what they'll do is there'll be a NOTAM system, a NOTAM issued. It will probably be done by FAA, but the airport can issue an aerodrome notice themselves that tower services are online, similar to how they would do for Sun and Fun. And then until that chart update printing comes out in that 6-month rotation for VFR and every 56 days for instrument operations, that'll go into the chart supplements. It'll go into all the databases. Everything will be through it, go through everything in aviation. So anybody who's coming into the airport following procedure and they'll be able to see that. Occasionally you might run into somebody, who may have failed to follow proper protocol. Generally speaking, there's, we kind of work with people when things first open up, and, there'll be someone from the airport go, hey, this is a tower airport, just so you know, things have changed.
So if a plane is coming in and is non-responsive, I assume all the other aircraft would then be in a holding pattern until that plane lands, is off, and then you bring in the other planes that are actually radioed.
So every airport has kind of different procedures and around those types of things, but how Bartow works and which is fairly standard in the system. If you have a non-com come into your airspace, they effectively bust the airspace, and they're not talking on the radio. You have air traffic in the area. Air traffic control would issue to all traffic that they have a non-aircraft not in communication within the airspace, and they will provide separation. They'll move those airplanes out of the way. As long as there's no effect, or if there is an effect, they'll get them out of the way, clear them of the airspace. And then we have, and this technology is actually very interesting. Part of the reason why that PTZ camera on top is so expensive is it has a lot of extra features built into it. So in a traditional tower environment, the way it works right now, we have this really funny looking cannon. It's 2 triggers on it, and it's this big bulky cartoon bazooka looking device, really. And it has a series of lights arranged in it, and there's triggers for different lights. And so if you get a non-com come into the pattern, air traffic control would stand with this thing close to their window, and they'd start shooting what we call light gun signals. All pilots have to learn the light gun signals, and I have to wear them on my kneeboard. I'm sorry, I can't ever remember what they are. So if they flash at me, I have to look down, because I've never actually had to be in a non-com situation before. But generally, while that would happen is the pilot would see those flashes, and they would establish communications by wagging the wings at them, and then they would put them through if it's inadvertent, the pilot lost communication, or maybe the pilot's transmitting, but it's not making it through and the pilot doesn't know that, they'll start flashing at them, establish communications. There's a series of commands that can be given through the light gun signals, put that aircraft into the pattern and get them onto the ground safely, and then bring the other aircraft back in. So there's procedures for getting the non-coms in.
Last question, and probably for Alex. What business opportunities does this open up for the airport by now having controlled airspace?
That's a great question. I can think of so many different benefits. To me, I'm really excited about the safety factor, for sure. We've got a new flight school that we're excited to bring on board, and that's one of the pieces that we're looking for. But certainly the business development side, I know there are certain insurance requirements for corporate aircraft operators for different reasons that will only operate in a controlled environment. It's the safest place to be. And so that part of it I'm excited about, but really I'm thinking about the momentum that we've gained out there. We have all the utilities in the ground. We've just are right at the final negotiations for a large flight school. I have follow-on opportunities that continue to come in through the door. And even after today's ribbon cutting, I think we have a few extra opportunities coming. So I'm excited. I think it's what people look for. I think it takes something like this takes you to the next level, and we should reap many benefits from this. Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I was just wondering, Alex, I know that economically that, you know, you're looking for development, that sort of thing. But initially, that staffing cost is a cost that we have to budget for, so to speak, not so to speak, matter of factly. And so all of that is intertwined with the airport overall budget. And so I'm just curious, and I know you all haven't even began, because it's just coming to us with the expense factors, so to speak. I guess strategically looking at what we think is possible can happen economically down the road. And that's because for a long time with our airport, we have been looking at trying to make it more economically viable. And we all realize that we subsidize the airport. And so I'm just trying to get my arms around it, because this is something new that we haven't had before. So
Yes, sir. And I feel like one thing I'm excited to share with you is, as I mentioned, John Murphy and T. Michael and I have been negotiating with this significant flight school that made an announcement at Sun and Fun. And I just want to give this one example. Their negotiations are for our land lease and constructing, two 12,000 square foot hangars that has a certain cost associated with paying for the land itself. That is, and it's significant, in the ballpark of $3,000 to $4,000 a month, just for the land lease itself. They're also talking about fuel sales at numbers that are far exceed our current base tenants fuel sales. So I think, this is an investment that we will absolutely recover. And one of the things that I also want to share with you is John Helms and I have talked about, if you wouldn't mind sharing sort of the opportunity here where, we have 100% funded digital remote tower, 1.2 million, but if you wouldn't mind sharing just, if we went the traditional route, because we've talked about what the cost might be associated if we were to build this as a traditional tower and the staffing associated with it.
Sure. So we operate our tower system fairly as close to, we keep the budget very tight, because we do manage our tower out of the airport budget, all of our staffing. So we're pretty comfortable with these numbers. They would exceed the requirements for staffing out of the contract system, and at other airports are probably twice as many operators as what we keep in, including plus air traffic management. So the biggest thing with traditional towers is, if you move to the traditional tower route, if you meet the qualifications of FAA for funding assistance, you obviously can get grants for it. But traditional towers are $10 to $12 million at general aviation airports, is the numbers that we're getting through our engineering firm of what we could expect to replace our tower if we had to. So you can see Bartow not having the traffic counts to be eligible for the FAA funding assistance to have a control tower. We would be on the hook for 100% of that funding. We just don't get the support for it. So for us, with an 80-year-old tower, we were looking for a replacement opportunity as well. And this was a very obvious opportunity for us in the digital remote world. This opportunity presenting itself, and the state of Florida and FDOT seeing this as a strategic asset to the state of Florida and offering 100% funding was a big deal. But just to touch on a couple things about recovery, the Academy with this project, and so we wanted to present that this is a tower at the end of the day. There's two different projects. You're getting a tower. There's an operating cost that's associated with the tower, but the other project is the Academy, and they're very tightly linked. There will be an Academy. The superintendent is very much on board with this project. The curriculum's been approved. They're moving forward, and as a staff, as they start training with students at the school, and they start cycling through the two airports. They're just today at the ribbon cutting, actually, we were discussing contracting rates for us to cover the costs. So when they're trying, so that really brings down that operating cost, because ultimately our operators and our equipment would be contracted to Travis Tech and Polk County Schools for the training program to help offset and subsidize the expense of operating the tower. And I think we could very, very easily do that and get the cost down significantly on staffing. And as far as Bartow goes, it's a direct exchange. It's not a business venture for Bartow Airport. We're providing you the same cost that it cost us to operate.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, because in the past, Eric, you all have talked about the project of training air traffic controllers and remote air traffic control. And I mean, I'm just trying to, is this a step in that project? And so.
Yes, sir, this is that project.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, this is that project. We're moving forward. We got secured funding from FDOT to support us in putting up the towers and making this project a reality.
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I could add to that, I think what Mr. Helms was sharing just a minute ago was, so the items that you'll consider this evening or for Monday evening, or our engagement with DOT to accept funding from them. It's the first tranche of funds for this construction project. We'll have another one likely in July. And then allocating a task order or assigning a task order to Hanson to begin the work of the design and the site locating and all the engineering that goes with it. Separate from that. So this is funding and advancement to get the tower up and running, no matter what the course of the staffing is. And that's where we've talked about hiring staff through a contractual interlocal type arrangement with the city of Bartow. The school district, and working with Mr. Helms and others of developing their program, may come on a little bit later in the process, which actually might benefit us, that we get some of the kinks worked out on the front end and begin to fold in those students so they learn alongside the trained professionals in that field. At our airport advisory committee meeting Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember when it was. Maybe it was even last week. I'm not sure.
It was last Thursday.
Okay. They're starting to run together. That was one of the questions of, certainly you don't want to have just a student in there operating that tower. And that's certainly, I want to put everybody at ease that that's not the intent, that they would learn in the classroom and they would gain the practical experience by sitting alongside someone that can mentor and guide them from that seat. Ultimately, that becomes a feeder program, not only for the other digital remote tower operations, but also for this one as well. So you've got some greater bench depth.
Exactly. And to tie it all together, the Central Florida Aerospace Academy High School wants to have that track in their high school program that would ultimately lead. It's all connected. I think that's going to end up being our specialty here in Winter Haven.
Okay.
Just two things. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your use of the word magenta. Not many men know what that really color even is. So I do, but I'm very impressed that you know what magenta is.
Every pilot knows magenta.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's an industry standard. So my question, Alex, this proposed virtual tower, do you have any kind of a mock-up, or where can we go to see what it's going to maybe look like? Is there a place you can go to see?
Yes, I can provide you all of that. Or Alex has it too, but we can get you the Frequentis documents that show all of everyone's a little bit different because they're built in multiple locations all over the world. But the array is basically going to give you several examples of what it's going to look like, including the pre-designed drawings of what ours will look like.
Do you think we can get that by Monday night, you think?
Absolutely.
Okay, that'd be perfect.
It's not so much a monopole type cell structure. It almost looks like the old kind of shoreline lighthouses, in my opinion, of a structural frame that's probably, I don't know, maybe 15 feet at the base and tapers up, and then you've got this array system around it. Very unobtrusive. I was just curious, John, relatively what the height of those are?
So we're in the range of somewhere between 60 and 80 feet.
Okay.
And it has to be, a site study has to be done, and Frequentis will also send their people down because there's angles that have to be accounted for, but between 40 and 60 feet.
Will it get painted magenta?
Can we paint it magenta?
Because I know my two other commissioners don't know what that means, so maybe they can learn what magenta is.
think
I only know it
painted
from
garnet and
the,
gold.
Rocky,
top of
Horror-
your tone.
I was thinking it was wasn't it one of the characters in the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Magenta?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. You're dating yourself. Okay, anything else for these two fine gentlemen? All right, well, thank you very.
All right.
All right, nothing on the minutes, second reading, we've been through these already, T, let's just put them real fast and see if there's any, well, there's only one, okay.
There's only one, and it's the issue, the item on the deposits, the non-interest bearing. I want to clarify something if I could, just for the commission's benefit. We've had a lot of talk about this. That, you know, the average deposit right now is about $180. The deposits that are in the system, a lot of them are significantly less than that. The average net yield of that interest on an annual basis is about 67 cents. The way that operates today is that just gets added to the deposit at the end of the year. And at the end of when the account is finally closed out, we have an ordinance that took effect in September of 2010 that actually did away with refunding deposits as a way to bring down the bad debt write-offs in that program. So the way it's set up now is that deposit is applied to your final bill when you close out, and then you're credited the rest of that that deposit is a payment from us. So
Is that
that's
easy, is that an easy accounting? Maybe I should ask CJ, is that an easy
I think-
accounting?
easy.
Easy, I mean, is it, because I gathered from Gary that he would rather not have to carry it forward or.
That's certainly our position, and then what brought this was it's a very tedious, labor intensive aspect of calculating that, applying it. And again, you know, the benefit of it is about, you know, less than $1 at the end of the day.
Well, why don't we make it easier on our staff and fix
Well,
it?
that's what.
That's what we're doing.
recommendations- Yes, that's what
Okay.
the recommendation is.
Oh, and before we can move on, I meant to ask CJ and also UT about the money for this airport thing. That's clearly, we're gonna have to support these people. We have that in the budget, or we're gonna be able to swing that, right? Because it looks like it's gonna be, you know, 2 more employees and benefits and all that, so.
Right, and Alex and I talked about this last week. It's not something we have to do this fiscal year coming. It will likely be an addition that we'll put in for the fiscal year 25 fiscal year based upon the timing of construction. So we will factor that into
Okay.
our budget, and I would certainly expect that we can accommodate that. You know, I can go back to what Alex said. You start looking at bringing on Blue Line Aviation and some of the other things that are coming to the airport, and what I think is going to follow Blue Line. You know, that is a big name in the aviation industry, and that's going to draw a lot of attention. You know, when Bruce lands those big deals out there at the ILC, and you got some remoras that follow behind it, maybe some even bigger sharks. I think that's what we're likely to see with Blue Line.
Okay. Well, I know we can find the money. I just meant
Yes,
to
sir.
bring that up earlier. I forgot, sorry. All right,
Consent agenda, just for your benefit, 10A, this is about advancing a ADA compliance plan for the city, something that we need to do. This is a requirement with our state and federal grants. So this is working through Kimley Horn to begin that process and give us a framework, which we can do a lot of the work on our own as a long range, but really starting with them to come in and get us going. The 10B, that's what Alex talked about with the permitting, designing, bidding and construction admin services for the digital remote with Hanson. 10C is another airport item, and this is dealing with some updates to the minimum operating standards at the Winter Haven Airport. You may recall that we did, we implemented minimum operating standards or amended those in July of last year. So they've been operating coming up on 10 months now. And Alex and the team have identified some things that need to be just tweaked within that. So probably the clearest one is the transient operation. So folks that maybe work on airplanes but don't have a business located specifically on the airfield, we need to find a way to factor that in. So it's just some cleanup language there. And that's been vetted through the Airport Advisory Committee, as have all the items. 10D is just for my attendance at the annual Chamber of Commerce retreat that will take place in July.
Where's it going to be?
Stream Song.
Okay, commissioners, any questions on any item on the consent agenda? Okay, resolution 11A, Pete?
This is, again, this is our DOT agreement for the $500,000 grant from them for the design and initial construction. The total cost is expected to be 1.23 million. So we anticipate, this $500,000 one has come in now, and we anticipate a $730,000 grant that will come forward in July as part of the fiscal year 24 state budget.
Okay, Cypress Gardens Boulevard and First Street overlook.
I'm going to ask MJ to speak briefly on this, and give some insights. This is, I'll give just me kind of intro real quick. You may recall, back in 21, so almost 2 full years ago, we participated in some design charrettes over at the Garden Center. DOT was going to be doing a resurfacing project on State Road 540, Cypress Gardens Boulevard, generally from about 9th Street where McDonald's is all the way out to Overlook Drive. So they did a lot of that work. They came away with some great ideas. We did some presentations to the commission, and they're ready to begin doing something now or further explore it. So I'll hand off for MJ for just a brief update on that.
Yep, even Mayor and City Commissioners. So T, I think basically summarized where we're at. The DOT is ready to start looking at design on that corridor, and we've asked them, to look at from First Street all the way out to Overlook, and they're actually starting to look a little further out even towards Cypress Gardens Road. And all we're doing with this resolution is simply asking them to take that community input that was gathered during the workshop and take that into account. We're not committing to any design recommendations specifically. We're just saying, here are the high level outcomes of that workshop that the community had, and incorporate those into the design process.
Okay,
This is just a resolution to support that, but they presented to us a preliminary design study of what they were envisioning.
Yep. So, and that wasn't, I wouldn't even call that a preliminary design. That was a sketch that was done during the workshop,
Okay,
based on what they were hearing from the community. So it included safe pedestrian spaces, intersection improvements, access improvements.
right. So has that gone any further?
It is not.
Okay,
And so that is kind of where we're at, is they're picking up and saying, okay, we're getting ready to move forward. And so what they're looking for is just some formal, recommendation from the commission that says, you held this community workshop, please take the input that the community provided into account.
all right. Who does this go to? Will this go to Bartow or somewhere else?
Yep, Bartow FDOT.
Okay.
Yep. And the planning studio, the design studio within FDOT is kind of who's holding that right now. But then it starts to move out of that design studio group and into their planning and engineering groups.
Gotcha.
And this is kind of what moves it from one to the other.
I'm just curious. We have some design and some construction for the intersections. I mean, and you say, I don't.
We have, there's some funding set aside for design and construction. That's what we had said, we could bring that to the table and pair it up with the resurfacing funding that the DOT had. And that's kind of how we got the conversation going. That was actually in about in late 2020. Then we held the workshop in 2021, and now DOT is just starting to get rolling on the design piece of it.
Okay.
We
The
still have
only
funding.
reason because the preliminary, I wasn't so sold on the initial document that was presented to us. I mean, but that was just a sketch. So.
Yep, and that's there was some high level outcomes there. It was things like improving access to the businesses along there, creating safer pedestrian avenues, slowing down the speed in the curves between 9th and Overlook. And really, those are the recommendations we're asking them to incorporate.
All right, I'm good. Yes. Okay.
You, T? I thought you were going to say.
Well, I was gonna say, we do have money set aside still for intersection improvements in that area. And based upon what they come away with as far as their recommendations, that would be where we could offer some skin in the game that benefit our commuters here.
Okay.
Brian?
So what control at this point forward, after this were to pass, what control is there? They come back and they say, we want to put a roundabout at Overlook Drive, First Street and 6th Street. Do we have any?
I think at the end of the day, that is an FDOT roadway, and they are going to make the improvement that they feel is going to move traffic the best and create the safest corridor. But having worked with the current administration there quite a bit, you know, I've heard LK say to his staff, if the cities aren't on board, what are we doing? Why are we doing anything here? So I think whatever our input is, would be heavily factored into how they move forward, especially because, you know, we'd probably be a funding partner in those.
So did I hear you correctly there? I mean, basically, they are holding us hostage on projects going forward. If they want to put a roundabout at X intersection, we say no, they're gonna pull the plug and spend all their money in Lakeland.
I don't know if that's. the way to phrase it.
No, I would not. I would
No,
not say that at all.
I think-
That's what I heard.
No, I think if they looked at an intersection and said, I'd say it's a roundabout or whatever the improvement might be, and they say from an engineering perspective, this is going to move traffic the most efficiently, this is the safest, improvement we can make. That's the improvement that they're gonna stick with and recommend, and that's because they have policies that they have to fall in line with that. For instance, on their roadways, they actually have to, the FDOT has a policy that for any intersection improvement they're doing, they have to consider a roundabout as an option.
My concern is all, and contention has always been, these guys that come in and they make these decisions, while they may be experts in what they do, they don't drive our roads every day. They're making their best educated guess as to what they should do here or there. So just, you know, hopefully we have a little bit more input and they don't take it personally if we don't necessarily agree with what their plans are.
Yeah, and I think again, from working with the current secretary, he is very much about, you know, we have to listen to what the communities have to say. I mean, that's how we got to this point. They could have just said, hey, we're gonna do a resurfacing project and that's that. But, you know, we said, hey, the commission's priority is to make some intersection improvements at 6th to 8th Street and 9th Street. How can we work together? And that's kind of where things are going. So, I mean, under LK and that current leadership there, I think they wouldn't want to move forward with something unless, you know, we're working together on it.
Nat, you want to say something?
I just want to say, Commissioner Yates, that you know that at the end of the day, it's their role. We have some say and they said it until they're blue in the face, but yeah,
You get my point, though.
I get your point. But
I think what Commissioner Yates is saying, to put words in his mouth, is that we would really like the idea of having like options A, B, and C.
I
And then the city commission gets to weigh in on option A, B, and C versus here's your option, take it or leave it. That's what we're
Right.
trying to not get to, because he's right. We drive these roads every day. But on the other hand, you have these.
And I don't think they will do that.
I don't think they
I
would either,
think
but
you'll have an A, B, or C.
as long as we can
But-
have some input and some weigh in.
We'll have to choose A, B, or C.
Yeah, and I think, and you know, with any project like that, the DOT is gonna do, there's usually always additional public input sessions. This was the one that we did in June of 21. That was just an initial, what are the problems with this corridor and what are kind of the high level goals that we want to try to fix within the corridor? And so those are the recommendations that we're making.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, MJ.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, next T.
Next is an ordinance that is an administrative request to revise some of our code of ordinances specific to our local modifications to the building code and floodplain management. I do want to point out, because he doesn't get to come to many of these commission meetings, but Willie Nabong, who is our floodplain manager and our assistant city engineer, is here. If you haven't had a chance to meet Willie, he is one of the most exceptional people you could ever come across. So we're grateful for what he does for us. But this is really about updating our floodplain management program and our community rating system. Just as you may recall, we are under that community rating system that insurance policy holders within the city, because we participate in that, they earn a 10% discount in their insurance policy premiums. So it's a benefit back to our residents to have this. But these updates that are required at this point really deal with some definition updates and language updates. It includes requirements for accessory structures, a variety of just different things within chapter 21 of the code. It also in order to fully implement the requirements of that community rating system, we need to do some amendments to chapter 5, which is the building code adopted. And it just references that the Florida Building Code is what we'll go by versus a standard building code. Make some other amendments within there. Really just some cleanup stuff to make sure we're in compliance. There's no direct financial impact. The Planning Commission looked at the changes to chapter 21 and we're fully on board with that. They did not look at the chapter 5 because that's not part of their role or their responsibilities, but it's really just cleanup stuff.
And this is one of those local amendments to the Florida Building Code that cities like Winter Haven don't have to forward upfront to the Florida Building Code. And the floodplain management type things are an exception. We do have to send it to them after we adopt it within 30 days.
Good deal. Thank you, John.
Uh,
12B,
The annexation, this is a little tiny triangle piece that's down at the corner of Eloise Loop Road and Westlake Eloise Drive. This is right at the corner where they're doing the roundabout today. So they're seeking annexation to develop within the city. The 2314. These are some amendments to the Airport Advisory Committee. Again, these have gone through the Airport Advisory Committee and there's a strike through and underlying ordinance within there. Kind of the main pieces with this, it's doing away with the alternate member. That if the alternate member is there now, they'll serve through August of 2025 and then that position will sunset. It talks about the attendance requirements for people, not just that you got to make, you can't miss 3 in a row because somebody could miss 3, come for 1, miss the next 3, come for 1, and they're still in compliance. So it talks about being present for a minimum of 2/3 or 66% of the meetings. It allows when there is a vacancy that the Airport Advisory Committee, much like our other advisory boards, would do a vetting process of interested candidates and make a recommendation back to the city commission for that appointment. It also allows us to expand at any time liaison members to serve as ex officios as we have new opportunities for that, and removes the requirement for the city commission liaison instead of saying they shall attend the meetings, meaning that you have to, that they should attend those meetings because we understand that that can be problematic. It also amends some of the language that's tied to their meeting schedule to give them just a little bit more flexibility if they have to make adjustments versus holding steady to a specific day of the month and time and location. So really just kind of frees that up. But these are just some cleanup language. The Airport Advisory Committee is fully on board with it. So that's what it speaks to.
okay. What else? Oh, do you have a question?
No, I just wondered, did we appoint a liaison?
The airport committee, not yet.
No, we've got a couple positions and I'll have some information on that for Monday evening. I'll put that under maybe to open the liaison discussion of what some of those are. The airport advisory is probably the key one within that of having an appointee there. I'm going to ask Eric to just comment briefly on 2317. If you would, Eric, this is on the one on Record Highway.
Sure, Mayor, Commissioners, this is a request to rezone 2 parcels from what is currently a plan unit development zoning district to commercial heavy C4. Back in 2008, there was an application and an ordinance adopted to adopt the plan unit development on this particular property. These 2 parcels are a portion of that PUD. It's recognizing an existing use. The subject property is currently being used for an expansion of an automotive repair business adjacent to the west and a mobile home sales business. This business has been in operation for quite some time. However, because of the PUD ordinance, it is a violation of that ordinance because those uses are not allowed in that PUD. However, given the surrounding uses and the surrounding zoning districts, it is appropriate to assign C4 to this property to make those uses legal and conforming. It does have an industrial future land use on it, so C4 is an appropriate zoning district for these parcels. The planning commission heard this on April 4th and voted unanimously to recommend approval of these requests. There were no members of the public that spoke.
And for
Can you zoom that out or in so we can? get
AJ,
it?
can you switch to there you go. So that's the Apple Lounge that is to the right of the property. So Coleman Road. This is going out Record Highway headed towards Spirit Lake.
That's the old Winn-Dixie there.
Yes,
the
sir.
Village Square.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it's that tree. I thought that whole area was developed, but I
That's
guess.
an older aerial.
It is?
Yeah, I believe it's been cleared at this point.
Yeah, I thought it had been.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Google images sometimes aren't as up to date.
Okay.
The next one that is 2320, AJ, if you just want to throw that up, this is just a simple annexation. About 0.11 plus or minus acres. It's out off of Dundee Road at Highway 550, which is the road that they closed off when they did the Dundee Road State Road 542 improvements. So they're looking just to annex for the purpose of developing a single family home on that property. Nothing too extraordinary about that. The next two, they're separate ordinances, but this is Posner Group Holdings. So this is Conservation Way. Brad, I know you're familiar with where Mayor Dancer, I know you're familiar with where this is. I don't know if Mayor Pro Tem or Commissioner Yates is quite familiar, but this is going out from Lake Ashton towards US 27. So Conservation Way is this somewhat dirt road that runs up through the development that we've approved through a PUD. So Posner Group is requesting annexation. The first one is for a parcel totaling 4.12 acres. It's a long conservation way, and it's just adding land to their adjacent development. So you can see in red there how it lays out. And if you see kind of how the road snakes up along the right-hand side of that, that would be an access point back to that property. The other triangle, AJ, if you want to just touch on the next one, you can get to it. So there's the other piece there. That's what is the subject of ordinance. Oh, let's see here, 2327. So they're just cleaning that up, those two together.
Now, somebody explain to me why they want to do this. What's the
So,
reason?
so the history on this is that when these parcels were annexed into the city, there's a large swath of property that remained in the county. You can see it there depicted in white because there's an enclave in the back, an area of the county at the top of the screen there that did not want to be annexed into the city. We couldn't create an enclave legally. And so we kept a large swath of property there, not knowing exactly what type of project or development was going to go in there. We have moved fast forward. We worked diligently with the county over a number of years to try to figure out some sort of interlocal agreement on what to do with that county piece of property. Part of the residents that will ultimately live there will be in the county. The vast majority of them would be in the city. How do we pick up garbage? How do we bill the folks for utilities? How do we do all that? And after quite a bit of discussion, we've because we know exactly where that Conservation Way road is going to go now, and that road is going to provide access to that enclave on the north side of the screen there. We can bring in all the rest of the property that is adjacent to that roadway, leave the roadway in the county, and that would be sufficient to meet Florida statutes. Ultimately, they were designing their property, and there were townhomes and single family homes where the half of the home was in the county and half of the home was in the city. And it was just too much of a problem.
Can't do that, can you?
No, you can't.
So they'll ultimately be annexed? Is that what ultimately happens?
This is what this is. This is annexing the property that is adjacent to the roadway so that it will all be in the city. The
This
city,
is the only piece that was outstanding is, or the back piece of the back is.
these are the two pieces whereby the owners of the properties are wanting to move forward with development at this time. So, as it's not all one owner within this development. So these owners want to move forward at this time, so we're going to annex them. Or requesting to annex them and so that they can move forward with their project and everybody would be in the city.
So everything in the white is in the county.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So the stuff in the back with all the little lines, they're not annexing. They will
Correct.
have to annex if they ever want service.
They
Or-
have to sign an annexation agreement, and if we can legally annex them, yes.
My
But they're-
sense is that that's part of what I think we refer to as the rookery. Has been referred to, and they're probably not going to be very interested in up there.
Yeah.
There may be some additional pieces to the north of what we're proposing to recommend for you to annex Monday. But as Eric noted, those will come in, property owners are ready to develop so that we can have a unified development, so we're not faced with this dilemma of county and city.
Is that the rookery? Is that where they used to have the ostriches? The ostrich
Like
farm?
an Audubon type rehabilitation.
Used to be a whole bunch of ostriches back there at one time. Big whole high fences. Okay. What else, Steve?
That's all. If I could just offer just a couple of comments, it's something I overlooked. I wanted to make sure you had seen that our pledge on Monday evening will be given by Boy Scout Troop 565. I think, Mr. Mayor, yourself and me are gonna meet with Kenny Moore
Mhm.
and some of these Boy Scouts prior to the meeting. They will present colors that evening as a kind of an honor guard type ceremony, and then lead us in the pledge. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
What time y'all gonna meet them on?
We're meeting them before the time we're meeting them. About 5:30, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Please, that'd be great. And certainly Commissioner Yates, if you want to join in as well, feel free. The other thing I was just going to remind you, this Friday is visitations at Laughlin for Commissioner Powell. AJ also will put it on your calendars for you. Yeah. So that's Friday evening, and then the memorial service celebration of life will take place at 2 p.m. on Saturday in the main sanctuary of First Presbyterian Church right here on US 17. So
Will there be a place for us to sit or?
I believe that's to be the case, and I will confirm that with Dr. Negley prior to then and make sure that we get that message out to you.
And I assume somebody will bring the proclamation. Do I need to get it before?
We can bring that, we'll bring that so you don't have to worry about it.
Good.
No, the Friday is just
Drop by.
drop by.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's at out there off of where's his viewing or the wake?
It's on West Central Avenue.
Oh, okay.
So down
From Lake Howard. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all I had this evening, sir. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions or comments for the good of the order? All right, we will see you Monday night. Adjourned.